Hola, buenas noches a todos. Es un placer volver a vernos este día tan especial y con esta invitada de honor que tenemos hoy.
Hi, everyone. Good night to everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all at this special night with our special guest.
Y bueno, hay muchas caras conocidas aquí, vemos muchas familias que hemos coincidido en otros momentos y hoy en el día de en la semana de la audición, celebrando el día del implante coclear, nos volvemos a encontrar tantos corazones juntos.
It's great to see all our families here to celebrate the week of the hearing. And tomorrow we are celebrating also Cochlear Implant Day, and we're very happy.
Así que no me resta nada más que agradecerles. Thank you, Joan, for this time for Mexican families. I really appreciate your time and your person and your professionalism. And Mary McGuinness, thank you to be here. Hello. And all the families we are glad to see here. Thank you for this time for all of us.
So good night, everyone. So as you know, everybody sent us some questions. And this night, it's an honor that Joan is going to answer all these questions. As well, at the final, you can also write your questions in the chat. We're going to have a few minutes, like 10 minutes, to answer them. So Joan, welcome. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you this night.
Thank you so much, Paula, and thank you to Jesse and all of the families for having me here tonight. I'm really looking forward to celebrating this special week with you. So Paula, do you want to ask the first question?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Joan. So the first question that our family sent was about auditory neuropathy and synchrony disorder. And they asked, how do we work with this syndrome in adolescents?
So Paula, this is a great question and a complicated question. I think that even families whose children do not have auditory neuropathy spectrum disorder can still get some information from this. But I need to do a little explaining first. So the way that we diagnose auditory neuropathy spectrum disorder is when a child has present otoacoustic emissions, so present emissions on that test, and absent responses on the ABR. So it's important to understand what those two tests tell us. OAEs tell us if the outer hair cells in the cochlea are working. So we put the sound in, and if the outer hair cells sense the sound, they work, and we can record that they are working. The ABR tells us if the information has gone through the ear and into the cochlea, and the hair cells made a code that they are sending to the auditory nerve and the brainstem. So if someone has typical ANSD, if they have typical sensory neural hearing loss, their outer hair cells do not work. So there is no response on the otoacoustic emissions test. And the ABR shows that there's no response at normal hearing levels. The information is not going through the ear to the auditory nerve and to the brainstem. But with ANSD, we get different results. The otoacoustic emissions test tells us that the outer hair cells are working, that they sense the sound. But the ABR says that the code they are supposed to send is not going out of the cochlea and into the auditory nerve and the brainstem. And we can have two different reasons why this happens. And the reasons are very, very, very different. The first reason, when we have traditional auditory neuropathy spectrum disorder, is that the hair cells in the cochlea are working. But the message or the code that they are sending is all mixed up. It's not a smooth, synchronous, pretty code that it is sending. And so the outer hair cells send and the inner hair cells send this mixed up code, and the brainstem doesn't see that there's a code there. So the hair cells work, but the message is all mixed up, and so it doesn't get to the brain. With cochlear nerve deficiency, where the auditory nerve is thin, the hair cells can still work, and they can send the code, and it can be a nice, pretty synchronous code, but the auditory nerve is too small to send the code to the brainstem and the brain. So these are very different, where we have either a mixed up code or we have a code, but the nerve is too thin to send the code. And so when we talk about ANSD and adolescence, we really need to talk about these two different reasons separately. So if the child has cochlear nerve deficiency, where the nerve is thin, the auditory nerve is thin, we know a couple of things. We know that 2 cochlear implants are going to work better than 1. And I do understand that in Mexico, that's not always a possibility. So if these children have 1 implant, or even if they have 2 implants, they're probably going to need additional language support as academics and school becomes more difficult. So I typed this in the wrong place. Practice listening in noise does not belong there. That is not right. I typed it in the wrong place. These adolescents are going to need a DM. They are going to need a Roger or a mini mic connected to their implants or hearing aids. Implants, they have implants. They may need a smaller class size because the nerve is not sending all the information, so they need a smaller class size where it's easier for them to listen. They may need captioning, where, like this, where the teacher's talking and they can read the information. I don't know exactly how that's available in Mexico, but many platforms now, like PowerPoint and Zoom, have options for captioning. Also, many cell phones now have fabulous captioning, like Google Live Transcribe. I heard of another program called AVA, AVA, which I think also is in Spanish. Or it's possible if these children don't read well that they may need a sign language interpreter when they get to the more difficult academics. What happened here? Oh, I think it skipped a slide. Is that what it did? Nope.
Yes.
There we go. Okay. So, but if a child has traditional ANSD, where the information is not synchronous, where it's mixed up, then some of these children may benefit from hearing aids, and they may have been wearing hearing aids for a long time. If groups, larger groups, social groups with children, or if school is getting more difficult, it may be time to consider cochlear implants, because we know cochlear implants will smooth the response and help the brain understand it better. If they are a child who has one cochlear implant, then it may be time to consider a second implant if that's possible, because the ear without the input might still be providing confusing or mixed up information. But when it's traditional auditory neuropathy spectrum disorder and not a thin nerve, in general, we see that these children's hearing fluctuates. It can get better and it can get worse. And these children may need programming more often in adolescence. We may see more changes as their body is changing. As they get older and their social circle is bigger and classrooms are bigger, noise may also be more challenging for them. I do think it's important to assess the situation. We know that adolescence can be very dramatic. And so, I'm the only person who can't hear. But we need to look at the situation. Is it a noisy restaurant? Is it a noisy classroom? Is it a noisy lunch area? And is everyone having difficulty hearing? It's important that we help the teenagers understand that. Is the teenager doing something to make it more difficult? Are they refusing to use their DM, their Roger, or their mini mic? Are they sitting in the back of the classroom because they want to sit with their friends, or they don't want to sit up front? We need to help them understand that certain things will make it easier, and talk to the teen about what things they could do to make it better. It's important that they use the DM, the Roger, or the mini mic. And still, in some situations, captioning might be very beneficial for them, because they may have more difficulty in noise than other students, and even other students with hearing loss. So I hope that was helpful, Paula. It's a lot of information.
Yes, of course it was. So the next question you already answered a little bit, but in traditional hearing loss, what do we do when noise bothers a child?
I purposely put this one after it because I agree they go together.
Yes.
So I think all of those things that we talked about with the DM or the remote microphone, the using the Roger, using the mini mic, making sure that the child sits in the right place, everything we can do to control the noise, all of those apply to any child with hearing loss. But sometimes we have where a child is bothered by a noise. And they'll say, it's too loud, stop doing that. But I think in Spanish, just like in English, too loud means many, many different things. So we need to help the children describe what is really happening. So sometimes I say, that is too loud because the sound is bothering me. My husband likes to tap his pen. It's not loud. I can still hear, but I will tell him it's too loud because it's bothering me. So sometimes sounds are just annoying or bothersome. And we need to teach the kids to say, could you stop that? Because it's just bothering me. It's distracting me. Sometimes we can say, I can't concentrate. I can't think because of that noise. Could we stop it? Sometimes when children say it's too loud, or adults, we mean, I can't hear what I want to hear because of the noise. So if I'm talking to my child and my husband is watching TV, I might say the TV's too loud. But it's not really too loud. It's just making it so it's hard for me to hear my child. So I say, the TV's too loud for me to hear what I need to listen to over here. Could you turn the TV down? Or sometimes that noise is louder than what I want to listen to. Parents will say that in the car. Some children want them to turn the music off in the car. And they'll say, the music is too loud, it's too loud. But I think what they mean is, I want to hear you talking, Daddy. I want to hear you talking, Mommy. I want to hear my sibling talking. And the music is too loud for me to hear them clearly. And all of that is very different from that noise is painful. And we never want the children to say that it's painful. But painful, we would see it on their face. If they have CIs, they might flip their magnets off. That we want to be concerned with. The other things we need to help children understand and verbalize what the problem is when the noise is bothering them. Because again, too loud means too many different things.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Joan, that's true. We have to teach them to give us exactly words that's how we can help them.
Yes, and we need to practice those words ourselves.
Yes.
You know, as a parent saying, I'm having a hard time hearing you because the TV is on too loud. Let's turn down the TV or let's move to another room. Modeling that language for them.
Yes, so true. So the next question is, how do we standardize cochlear implant programming?
I was so happy that I could find a billion peso question picture.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. I don't know the answer to the question completely. But I think that everyone involved, surgeons, audiologists, therapists, parents, all of us must have the highest expectations. We must all want children to be like their typically hearing peers. We can't have anyone who has lower expectations. I think all of us need to be working to meet those expectations. Every one of us needs to do our best. I'm going to say that again because I didn't see the.
Yes, it's
Okay.
working.
Okay. On my end, it stopped.
No,
Okay.
you're
On
right.
my end, it stopped too.
It stopped it also.
But I'm sure Andy can help us with this.
Okay.
Andy, separaron los subtítulos.
Okay. Let's see. Are the. Oh,
Gracias.
So you were talking that we have to work always as a team, right?
yes. And everyone on the team must have the highest expectations for the child. We also all need to understand that what children say is what they hear. So if their voice is beautiful and their language is developing, then we are going in the right direction. And the programming must be good. If children's voices do not sound normal, if their language is not developing, then those things tell us our programming is not what we need. We have to evaluate everything when children are not meeting expectations. And I wish, Paula, that I could say there was an easy way to standardize programming. But I think it starts with expectations.
Yes, I agree with you. And also I think that it's important to remember that the cochlear implant programming is a process, and also each patient is different from the other.
Mhm. Yes, I always tell about 3 patients we had who got implanted at the same age, profound hearing loss, no benefit from hearing aids. They got implanted at the same age, and all 3 are very successful. But all 3 developed differently. One child developed amazing receptive language. He didn't talk for a little while, but you knew that he was understanding so much. The second child developed receptive and expressive language very quickly. She was talking so quickly, but you couldn't understand anything she said. And the third child didn't talk for a year. And then we were very, very, very worried. We couldn't tell if he understood or if he could say anything. And then one day he came in for programming, and the other audiologist gave him a fire truck. And she said, "Here's a fire truck." And he said, "No, fire engine." And he said it perfectly. We didn't know he could talk, but he could perfectly. So I always remember that every child, whether they can hear or not, develops along their own path. So we have to recognize that children will be different, but our expectations should be high.
Thank you, Joan. Our next question. How soon should children return to school after a cochlear implant?
So in the United States, typically our surgeons say when the children are feeling better, that could be 3 or 4 days, that could be up to 2 weeks, that it's fine. But with COVID, I think it's important to ask the surgeon for the specific recommendations for your child. If your child has other health issues, they may not want the child to return to school right away. So I think the surgeon is the one to ask.
Okay. And if we think in another situation, like, I know, maybe some COVID can get away, and if our patient is a little patient, like with 2 years, how soon do you recommend they can go to a nursery or to stimulation like Gymboree, something like that? Do you recommend it as soon as possible?
So normally our kids return to their normal activities very quickly. Many times the little ones will have surgery on Thursday, and Monday they will go back to their regular activities as long as they're feeling fine.
Okay. And simulating another situation, if our child never went to a nursery because of the hearing loss, and now parents want to incorporate them to a nursery, could they go as soon as possible? Or maybe they have to, I don't know, maybe they have to wait that this child know much better the environment around him or her?
That's a great question. I think, especially for a little one, the cochlear implant is a big change. So I think I would wait so that we're not changing everything. And I think it's so important, those in the beginning, for the parents to be there as much as possible. So if the child hasn't been to daycare, I think staying with the parents and providing that input is always the best. And it would be a big change for a child who just got an implant. So I would say wait.
Thank you, Joan. Our next question. What is the one thing that can most help your child?
So I picked 3 things, but one isn't really what you're going to do. Well, never mind. So 1, I would say put away all screens. No phones, no tablets, no computers, no TVs, especially now. Use those only for special occasions. Our children are being exposed to so much screen time. And I think it's really interfering with their language development and their cognitive development and their language. So the 2 things I want you to do after you put the screens away are 1, play games with your child and your whole family. And number 2, read to your child. Play games. Even very young children can play simple games. If you don't know what games would work for your child, ask your therapist for suggestions of games that would be appropriate for your child's developmental level. Games are so language rich. Talk about the rules and the parts of the game and the pieces of the game, what's happening in the game. And games require conversation and turn taking, even for little kiddos. Talk about your strategy. Why did you play that card? Why did you move 3 spaces? What is the child's strategy? Oh, did you know that you could go there or there? So much language. And I would say play fairly. Do not let your child win every time. Children sometimes have to lose. That's life. And read to your children. Books contain more vocabulary, language, and adventures than anything else. In San Diego, and I think in Mexico City, it does not snow very much. So my children didn't see snow, but I could read them books about snow over and over. We could talk about that snow was cold and that you have to put your jacket on and your hat on and your gloves or your mittens and a scarf. So much vocabulary. And we could have that experience over and over and over again, even though we have no snow. We also don't have wild animals in our backyard. And we can go to the zoo, but not every day. But in books, I can talk about animals that live all over the world, from polar bears to giraffes. And we can have those adventures over and over and over again. And I would say plan to read you reading as the parent to your child at least until age 14. And parents say, but my child doesn't like to read. And I think it's part of your job to show them how much fun reading is, what incredible adventures you can have in a book. And if you need help, ask your therapist for some suggestions, and ask your therapist for help in reading, to your child. I think it skipped a slide. And I would say start reading today. We should read to babies starting the day they are born. Some moms read to babies when they're in their stomach. Don't stop when the baby is born. For beginning language learners, they say 10 books a day. Like 10 books, really? But it's easy. Like, books only, they're tiny little board books. Maybe they have 5 pages. So read 2 books in the morning when they wake up. 2 books before every nap. 2 books before bedtime. And yes, you can read the same book again if they have a favorite book. And every time you read it, that counts for another book. Children who are starting to develop language and put words together, begin reading a little bit longer book, one that has a little bit of a story. Talk about the pictures. Talk about the story. If you've read the book a lot, have the child tell you parts of the story before you read it. For children who are using sentences, read longer storybooks where you have a real story. Start reading a beginner chapter book that has less pictures and a longer story. We have Magic Treehouse books. I think they're in Spanish too, which are little adventures that are maybe 5 or 6 chapters long. Read the whole story so children learn to listen with fewer pictures and to a longer story. If your child is learning to read, if they are in school, many parents stop reading to them because they say, my child needs to learn to read now, but don't stop reading to them. Read books that they cannot read. They have to read really easy books. They're not very fun. And learning to read can be challenging. So read harder, exciting books to them so that they can see that reading is fun. If I learn to read, I'm going to be able to read these really fun things. And even for children who can read more challenging books to them. What I did with my son when I was thinking, I think he could read a little bit harder book, but he was intimidated. He was scared. So I would read some of the book to him at night. I would read a chapter and I would stop at the exciting part. And then I would put the book down. And I would say, I have to go do the dishes. You have about 15 more minutes before bedtime. You can read, but don't read this book. Don't read this book without me. And the next day, he would say, Mommy, I read the book. And I would say, no, oh no, now I'm going to have to read while you're at school. I want to know what happened. And I encouraged him to read harder books. But I always, even when he was 12, 13, 14 years old, I was always stretching him with the books that I read to him. I think that was the last of the questions, Paula.
Yes, thank you, Joe. It's very important to teach the love for reading to our children, any children.
Yes, reading teaches more than with language and vocabulary than anything else we can do.
Yes, that's right.
And for us to read to them so they can learn to love reading.
Yeah, so we have some questions here. We have like 10 minutes to answer some questions.
Great.
So the first one, it's what are the benefits of cochlear implantation in a 5-year-old patient with unilateral congenital hearing loss for the right ear?
Okay. Great question. And a very current topic. So I have I think 4 or 5 patients. This is a patient who has normal hearing in one ear, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Left ear normal, and right here she has a profound hearing loss, but she has a good language, some omissions. The problem is noise.
Yes. So I have 4 or 5 children who have one ear that is normal hearing and one ear that is deaf, who have cochlear implants. And I think all of them have the implant in the right ear. I think that is the deaf ear. And it's important to understand that the right ear is a very important ear. The information from the right ear goes to the left hemisphere of the brain, which is where the main speech and language processing happens. So the right ear to the left brain is a short path and a fast path. It processes at adult speed by about age 5. The left ear to the right brain and crossing over is longer and slower. And that path doesn't reach adult speed until about 17 or 18 years old. So children who are deaf in their right ear are having to listen with a slower, less mature path. So our children who have an implant and a normal ear, one of the children was implanted at 12 months. She does perfectly with her implant. The other children, two got implanted at age 5 and one at age 10. And all of them are doing very well with their implant. All of them, we think, were born deaf in the right ear, but it was not diagnosed until age 5 or so. They do not do perfectly like the child who got implanted at 12 months. Her speech perception with the implant is like 80 or 90%. The other children who got implanted at 5 or 10, their speech perception is like 50% or 60%. But they report tremendous benefit from the implant. I'm sure there are patients who don't like their implant, but I think programming probably makes a big difference. If it were my child, I think I would try.
Okay. Thank you, Joan.
Oh, and I didn't say Paula too. We just got some testing protocols because some of the benefit is not what the speech perception is, it's the benefit in noise, the benefit in just having extra information. One of the boys, the 10-year-old, was in last week, and he said, I miss things when I don't have my implant on, and I miss much less when I have it on. So just having that extra information.
Great benefit.
Great benefit.
With that little bit.
But we have to learn how to measure that benefit.
Yes, right. Thank you, Joan. The next question is it possible to suffer simultaneously from both types of auditory neuropathy disorder? And also about auditory neuropathy, if the strength of the magnet is changed, do we need a new mapping for a cochlear implant?
So with auditory neuropathy, I think an ear can only have one type. So it is going to be the traditional type or the thin nerve. The other ear, the traditional type or the thin nerve. I have not seen a patient who has one ear with traditional and one with thin nerve, but it's possible. But each ear, the ear will only have one type, I think. That's what I think. As for the magnet, The battery life may change if the magnet changes. But the mapping shouldn't be a lot different. The mapping shouldn't be different, just the battery life. And the next time they're connected to the computer, it should correct the battery issue.
Okay, thank you, Joan. So next question. So I think that's all. I don't know, Monica, if I'm missing something because I can't.
It's okay, Paula. It's okay,
Thank you.
Paula. I can continue with the questions. Joan, hi.
Hi.
Asking, she has an 18-month-old boy, and he has a type 3 partition of the cochlea. She says he's not listening yet. He's been programmed 2 times. She wants to know if from audiology, is there something else that can be done in order for him to listen?
So our children who've had cochlear malformations have still generally done very well with cochlear implants. So with 2 programmings or 3, just a few programmings, right?
Yes, 2 times, she says.
2 times, yeah. So even children who have normal cochlea can sometimes take a little bit of time to recognize sound. As Paula said, programming is a process. So after 2 programming sessions, I wouldn't yet be concerned. It may just be a process.
Thank you, Joan. I think that's very clear. Another question is, a mom wants to know what is the most important thing that you consider when you're evaluating and programming cochlear implants?
For a child who has implants or a child who needs implants?
I think for the time that you're programming implants.
Okay, so when they have the implants. So I really consider the child's voice quality, their ability to produce the sounds, the ability to imitate sounds accurately, and their speech and language development. Again, what they say and how they say it, even if they don't have words yet, gives us the most information about what they hear.
That's a very nice answer. Thank you, Joan. Another mom wants to know if noise in a party is always bothersome for a child with cochlear implants. She says she has seen her daughter enjoying the music on a party.
So it's not always bothersome. We want the noise to be comfortable. We want the music to be comfortable at the party. If the child is dancing and not talking, it may not be a problem. That happens with us. We dance, we are not talking. But then if we go to talk to somebody, if the music is loud, we might have trouble hearing. The same with a child with hearing aids or cochlear implants.
Exactly. Exactly. So again, we have to follow the cues the kids are giving us, right? And then
Yes.
our another question is there a specific time when you recommend to start teaching a second language?
So the research on two languages is that the younger, the better. And the research shows that the best is when you have different caregivers whose native language is different. So if we have a family, mom speaks Spanish, she only speaks Spanish to the children. Dad's native language is English, he only speaks English to the children. And that provides the richest language because mom's language is rich in Spanish and dad's language is rich in English. And that is better than going back and forth or trying a language that you are not fluent in.
Okay. And then we have many more questions, but I think we have time for how many more? Maybe one or two, Joan?
Sure, one or two. Oh, I didn't even know what time it was.
It's 9 o'clock. So this family says that they were taking a bath with his son, and he obviously wasn't wearing his technology, and he started crying, saying, "It's not fair. I don't listen. I want to listen to what you're saying when I don't have my cochlear implants." Do you have any suggestions what to say in those moments? I know everyone goes through those times. So do you have any suggestion?
They are hard. So all the manufacturers do have water, aqua wear for the implants. So even if it's possible to put one in the case and wear it for the bath or swimming, I do think it's worth it, especially for a child who's asking. So I think when we can accommodate the request, we should try.
Okay.
The other times, sometimes sometimes the implant has to come off, maybe at night or something. Then I always explain, I wear glasses, I have to take my glasses off when I sleep. I can't see very well. I don't like it, but sometimes that's just what happens.
Exactly. Thank you, Joan. And I think one last question. There's another one that asking you to explain the new sounds for the LHM.
LMH.
LMH.
Sorry, I still have, but I think that's for another time, in another very long time. Well, but someone else is asking if why do we have to reprogram? Why it's not just once and that's it?
Sure. So quickly on the LMH, there's a great article that was published by A.G. Bell, and it's in Spanish now too. And I think we are looking at the sounds to make sure for the 10 sounds, we have the right sounds for Spanish. But the important thing is not the 10 sounds. The important thing is that we're working for children to imitate all sounds. And eventually all sounds in the middle, like aba, afa, ada. So it's not just 10 sounds, it's about learning to imitate all the sounds. And as far as reprogramming, first, easy answer. I mean, I have to get my glasses checked every year. I have to get my eyes checked. Implant has to be checked, or your hearing aids every year, because maybe little changes will make things much clearer. But also, the engineers say that because the implant is sitting in fluid, there are tiny micro movements of the electrode array. So it can move a teeny tiny bit in the cochlea. And in my mind, that means one electrode might get a little closer to the tissue or might move a little farther away. And when we make adjustments for that, it makes everything clearer, just like my new glasses do. And so that reprogramming is so important to make sure that sound is always as clear as it can be.
Okay.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you, Joe. And the last one, the million question. What's your opinion about implanting children with neuropathy and inner ear malformation?
So that is the billion peso question. We believe all children have a right to hear. Children with auditory neuropathy, where it's traditional, do very well with cochlear implants. We know that. We have no hesitation in implanting them. We have lots of children with cochlear malformations. They generally do very well with implants. Our surgeon does have some recommendations on the electrode arrays to use, and which electrodes seem to be better for the malformations. And children with thin nerves, so auditory neuropathy, that is thin nerves, we have children who are doing much better than would ever be expected. Dr. Kari that we work with is presenting on 10 or 12 of our patients at the American Neuro-Otology Conference in May on children who all have open set listening and thin auditory nerves. But again, 2 implants works much better than 1 for those children, much, much better. So we implant all of them. And most of them are doing much better than expected.
Thank you so much, Joan. We're so glad and happy that you made some time to be with us this night. And now I'm going to ask Fer to give some words to you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Paula.
It's always
Thank
a
you,
pleasure
Monica, too.
to learn with you.
And thank you, parents. Excellent questions.
So thank you, Joan. As Paula said, we cannot thank you enough. We know you do miracles with cochlear implants, with our children and our families, and we will never be grateful enough. And Jessie, I don't know if we could, we have a surprise for everybody here for the Cochlear Implant Day. Jessie, do you think
Yes.
you can help me? Yes.
Yes, this is a surprise for a wonderful mom for all of Mexican families. Thank you, Oli.
So one mom at Aurea made this surprise for everyone with the help of many families. And please know that we're all here in case you want to contribute or support in whichever way other families. It's always needed and appreciated. So Jessie. Joan, how many of those children do you know? ¿Cuántos, at cuánto? Bueno, I'm going to speak in Spanish, Joan, with everyone. Is that okay?
It's fine.
Are you happy to see so many of your children, Joan?
Yes, but they have gotten so big.
Le pregunto si está contenta de ver a muchos de sus pacientes. Dice que sí, pero que se han puesto muy grandes. Y a todos los que, Oli, muchísimas gracias por ese hermosísimo video, de verdad, es una belleza. A todos los niños que están en ese video los amamos, a todos los que no están en ese video los amamos, y a todos ustedes que están aquí hoy también. Queremos siempre, cada día lo mejor. Joan, I'm going to give you the final words.
Thank you all so much for coming. This really is a celebration.
Gracias a todos por venir. Esta es en realidad una celebración.
Digital hearing aids and cochlear implants truly are miracles. And they are worth celebrating because they do truly give children a life that they never could have had without them.
Así es, esta tecnología, ¿no? Es milagrosa y eso, ¿no? Es el milagro de ver todos los días lo que se puede lograr con ellos. Y que nos quedamos con este buen sabor de boca y nos despedimos de ustedes. Saben que vamos a mandar sus preguntas, ya tomamos nota en el chat y sus correos. Y vamos a intentar responderles a lo largo de la próxima semana. Saben que tenemos estos servicios. Aquí están. También que sepan muchas familias que Joan programa remotamente a niños en Áurea si lo necesitan. También supervisa el área de programación en audiología y acompaña a las audiólogas para que pues podamos tener programaciones muy lindas y sus hijos tengan voces muy lindas. Y pues nada, solo somos afortunados. Así que cuenten con nosotros. La siguiente diapositiva, Jessie. Creo que siempre nos da gusto compartir programas como este. Mañana se implanta el chico, el 12º paciente de este programa. Es un programa en el cual se les dan los implantes cocleares gratuitos. Audiología, terapia, cirugía a sus chicos. Sabemos que esto es difícil. Es importante que sean chicos menores de 2 años para ingresar a este programa. Si quieren, aquí están los datos de contacto. Y pues eso, ¿no? Muchos papás de estos chiquitos están aquí. Estamos viendo cómo van apareciendo sus vocecitas y van hablando y nos encanta verlo. Si alguien quiere ser padrino de otra familia que está empezando el camino, por favor, contáctenos también a Jessie. Nos va a encantar poder hacer estos contactos. Y pasamos a la siguiente, Jessie. Muchísimas gracias. Bonita noche. Chao.